So my name's Amantha, which is a bit of a weird name. It's like Samantha without the S. That's the best way to remember it. And yes, I was a table tennis champion, which made me mighty cool at school. It didn't. So I thought today I want to start, I'm going to be talking about innovation, giving you some really practical tips, but I want to start by sharing a story about myself from childhood. So when I was 8 years old, I was asked to illustrate this book here called Annie's Stories, which I think is pretty impressive as well, in addition to table tennis. Like, did anyone else illustrate a book when they were 8? No, it's quite impressive. So how I got the gig is that my mum wrote the book. So it's all about who you know. And my mum's a clinical psychologist, and the gist of the book was to help children deal with phobias through the power of storytelling. And my brief as an 8-year-old was to illustrate those phobias from a child's point of view. So I'll show you some of my works. I'm sure you're keen to see it. So this is from the chapter of Fear of Nightmares. I was obviously thought, birds had teeth or something like that. It's a bit weird. This is from the chapter of Fear of Going to the Doctors. If you look at what's on the doctor's table, it looks like he's got this serial killer vibe going on, something weird going on there. And this is from the chapter of Fear of Dogs, or how I've interpreted the brief, slightly more niche fear of poodles. Comes up every now and then. But anyway, the book ended up being published, and it was published all over the world. And when I was 10 years old, my mum and I were invited to travel around America on a book tour. And one of the places that we're on was the NBC Today Show. You probably can't pick the decade that this happened in. And my mum's not Cher. Just want to point that out. Anyway, the book did very well. But if you were to ask me now, how do you get a gig illustrating a successful book? I'd literally have no idea. I was in the right place at the right time. And I think that when we're thinking about innovation, this is how a lot of companies approach things. They kind of get in the right place at the right time, whether you're a marketeer or a product developer or a process engineer. A lot of companies just get lucky. And one of the things that I do at Inventium, which is the innovation consultancy that I run, is that for the last 7 years now, we've partnered with the Australian Financial Review, running the most innovative companies lists. And every year now, when I judge the list, we come across this thing that I call innovation one-hit wonders, where there are these companies that maybe make the list one year, but then the following year, they either don't make the list, or we call them and let them know that entries are open, and they say, oh, we're not going to be entering this year. And I ask, well, why not? And they say, oh, we haven't really done anything innovative in the last 12 months. As if it's just something that you do occasionally. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to explore innovation and how we can all get better innovation. Really, sound went off there, in a really practical and sustainable way. And how we're going to do that is through science. So at this point, I should share that I'm a massive science geek, which I know, shock horror, here you are thinking, oh, but she looks so cool and hip. So I'm a massive science geek, and did a bit of a life sentence at university, and then just keep reading academic journals for fun because they're awesome. So the company that I started, Inventium, we basically exist to bring science in the form of psychology and neuroscience and management science to helping organisations and individuals become better innovators, no matter what the realm that you're innovating within. So we're going to get on to some practical stuff, but first I want to just get us on the same page as to what innovation is. So just a show of hands, who's working at an organisation that values innovation? And it literally might be a value. Okay, so it's pretty much everyone. And whose organisation has a formal definition of what innovation means? That's one person. Can I ask what it is? I love it. That's awesome. That quite often happens, actually, when I'm asking audiences this. A handful of people, maybe 3 or 4, will go, oh, yes, we've got a definition. And when I ask what is it, they're like, I don't know. I'm not sure. The board's signing it off. So it's not a complexity issue. It's just a Bored, being slow. Okay, excellent. That never happens. So I want to share with you the way that we define innovation in Inventium, the way that we define it for the purposes of the AFR Most Innovative Companies list as well. And it's really simple. We say that innovation is change that adds value. So firstly, what's important about this definition is it's about change, and change is a democratic thing. Like, anyone is capable of making change. Whereas the problem that we run into sometimes with innovation is that it's sometimes seen as just the realm of those in technology or marketing or R&D and so forth, which is not helping anyone, because research shows that for innovation to thrive, we need to democratize it so anyone can make a change. And secondly, it's not just about change for change's sake. Like, that innovation has to add value, and that value might be financial, it might be intangible, it might be some other kind of value, but it's change that adds value. And also, it's 4 words long. So, if you want to steal this definition, it's an easy one to remember. A lot of our clients steal it. Okay, so now that we've got that sort of all on the same page around what innovation is, let's talk about how to get better at it. I'm going to go through 4 different things, 4 very practical ways that you as an individual, no matter what you're up to, are able to just become more innovative. So who's ever had that experience of like feeling like, you've had your eureka moment and you've just come up with this killer idea and you're super excited about it? Who's had that experience before? Yeah, I would hope that we all have. But because of the excitement that comes with coming up with a new idea, we incorrectly believe that innovation starts with an idea. But this couldn't be further from the fact. Innovation should never start with an idea. So I'm sure that some of you are familiar with this quote about drills. People aren't buying a 1/4-inch drill, they're buying a 1/4-inch hole. What is this quote telling us? What does this mean? Yeah, the need is the whole. People are buying the outcome. That's exactly right. And so if we think about this in the context of innovation, what we're really looking for and trying to understand is that people don't actually buy products. People buy solutions to their problems. And again, I use this really broadly in terms of the way that we're talking about innovation. So, really all people want, they just want their problem solved. So really what we need to be looking for is, what are the problems that customers have that right now don't have an adequate solution? So that is the key to innovation. That's where we need to start. And one of the best points to start is understanding what frustrates people. And obviously, with the opening presentation that we've all just seen, there are some really big problems and really big frustrations in the world, but there are also a whole lot of little ones. And what I would love you to do, just for the next 60 seconds, is to reflect on the last day, 24 hours, and think about what is something that has frustrated you in the last 24 hours. And I just want you to have a quick conversation with the person next to you. Just share that thing that has frustrated you. Go for it. All right, wrapping up those conversations. Thanks, folks. Wrapping up those conversations. Cool. So funny, when we talk about our frustrations, just energy levels rise. Funny that. Did anyone not identify a frustration? No optimists here today. Very good. What were some of the frustrations that came out? Just yell them at me. Not being able to get on the Wi-Fi. I got on the Wi-Fi. What were you typing in? What else? Traffic. Okay, yeah, excellent. Yep. Going through airport security. Oh, love that. I've just come back from New York and I got to say, just the American airport security people just make you feel like a criminal. Anyway, I wasn't carrying anything illegal. What else have we got? No hot water. Oh, that's very frustrating. Anything else? Oh, getting children out the door in the morning. Yes, very frustrating. Very good. So lots of different frustrations. And basically what all these frustrations represent is they represent an opportunity for innovation. Like if any of those frustrations, if someone could solve those frustrations for you, that's probably something that you would value, whether it be giving that solution some time or some money or some other form of value. And then like it begs the question, when you're thinking about the customers that you guys serve, and I use the customers, the term customers very broadly, whether that be consumers, clients, customers, whatever, thinking about the customers that you serve, I'm wondering, when was the last time you asked them what frustrates you? And so I'm curious, like who in the last month has gone out to a customer and asked them, what is something that we do as an organisation that frustrates you? Or what is something that our industry does that frustrates you? Who has asked a customer that specific question in the last month? 2, 3 people. Okay, interesting. Without asking that question, it's very hard to know what are the problems that are actually valued in terms of what we can solve. So I would say it's very specific homework. Go out and ask a customer that question in the next week, because whatever you get, it will be valuable information in terms of where you can be focusing your efforts. And as an example, and I mean there are many, like if you look at any successful business or service or product or process, it is overcoming some kind of frustration the majority of the time. Like I want to show you this. This is a company called Filled, who absolutely loves it when they're driving and their fuel tank is like about to hit empty and you're like, oh, I got to go to a petrol station. Who loves that feeling? It's so annoying, isn't it? Like it's only 5 minutes out of our day, yet it is very, very annoying when that happened. So this company over in San Francisco, Filled, recognized that. And what Filled does is you download the Filled, it's almost like Uber for petrol, I guess. So you download the Filled app and when you are running low on fuel, you book some petrol to be delivered to your car. And the Filled person comes to your car, you just leave the fuel thing open, and your car gets filled up and you just pay via the app. How cool is that? That's awesome. And it's awesome because it's solving what is a frustration, a pretty universal frustration. Now, to take this a step further, do we have any Bentley drivers in the room today? No? Okay. So Bentley took this a step further and they formed a partnership with Filled, whereby if you happen to be in the market for a Bentley, your Bentley, the fuel, what's it called where the fuel sits? The fuel tank, that's right, just testing. The fuel tank communicates with Filled automatically. So when it is 1/4 full, it automatically says, hey, Filled, come and fill me up, and it gets filled up. So you literally don't have to think about your fuel tank ever again. Oh, crazy. So the first thing that I want you guys to take out of my presentation is to find frustrations. Frustrations are where the best innovations and the best solutions that we can come up with start. So you can take a photo of it, but you can also do this. I want you to go like this with your hands, like you're really frustrated, like, you know, that kind of thing, like the cartoon characters do. Okay, so we're going to go like this, like all of us. Yes, excellent. Very frustrating from up here for those few people aren't doing it. So going like this. And then on the count of 3, we're going to be reading what's up on the screen, okay? And going like this. 1, 2, 3. Find frustrations. Excellent. So the reason why we're doing that, we're going to do that a few more times this morning, is to really lock this stuff in memory. So what we're doing is we're seeing it up on a screen, so it's going into a visual memory system. We're saying it out loud, so it's going into an auditory memory system, and we're doing something with our body, so it's going into a kinesthetic or muscle memory system. So 3 times the chance of remembering this stuff, which I think is good odds. And you can trust me on that because I'm a psychologist. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. So whenever we've got a problem to solve, let's just say we've identified our problem, one of the biggest things that is fencing in our thinking, one of the biggest barriers to creativity out there are assumptions. So whenever we have a problem to solve, there'll be all these assumptions that fence in our thinking, and assumptions can be real, like, you know, my budget to solve this problem is X number of dollars, or they can be perceived, like, you know, I don't think customers like this feature or something like that. But whatever the case, assumptions kind of like put up this fence in our brain, and it says to our brain, you know, brain thinking cannot wander beyond this little area here. So what we want to do is we want to identify those assumptions and we want to crush them. and ask what if the opposite was true? Because by identifying those assumptions, literally writing them out and asking what if the opposite was true is a great way to break down barriers in your brain and dramatically increase your own creativity. So I'll give you some examples. Now, I picked a mobile phone, which is a little bit depressing after what we've just seen. But anyway, we'll go with that. Who has got an iPhone? What sort of market share? Oh, everyone. Wonderful. We're killing people in other countries, but at least we can communicate. If you think back, let's say, I think 11 years now, back when Nokia, do you remember Nokia? Back when that was relevant. Imagine that you're working in the product development team at Nokia and your boss says, okay, your challenge this year is to come up with the next big thing in mobile phones. Like, one of the assumptions that would be fencing in your thinking is that a mobile phone only has it must have 12 buttons on it, because how else are we going to make a call if we don't have the 12 buttons for all the numbers and the hash and star? And so that would fencing in your thinking. What Apple did is they crashed that assumption. They said, well, what if a mobile phone only had one button on it? What could that look like? And through crashing that very fundamental assumption, completely changed the interface of mobile phones as we know it. And now, of course, the assumption is that a mobile phone has no buttons. Another example comes from Volvo. So I'm a Volvo driver, which doesn't tend to surprise many people. Anyway, that's fun. That normally gets no laugh today. So clearly you're like, well, of course she's a Volvo driver. Anyway, so if imagine like you're building cars for a living and you're thinking about safety, and one of the assumptions that is going through your brain when you're trying to make a car safer is that you think, well, airbags have to go inside the car to protect the driver and the passengers. Well, Volvo crashed this assumption and they said, well, what if we could design a car that could actually protect people outside of the car? What if they didn't have to go just in the inside of the car? So they designed a really cool car a few years ago that has an airbag inside the bonnet, as pictured here. And what happens if your car hits a pedestrian front on, normally what would happen, the pedestrian would go onto the windscreen, which is where the majority of the damage is done. But instead, with this innovation, the airbag pops up over the bonnet and the pedestrian lands on the front airbag, which is pretty cool. I don't know if my car has that yet. So the second thing that I want us to remember, and really, like, if you look at any great innovation, whether it be a marketing innovation, product innovation, service innovation, chances are it is crushing a fundamental assumption in terms of what we assume and how we assume that problem should be solved. So we're going to lock this down in memory, crush assumptions. For this, can I get everyone going like that, crushing something in your hand? Yep. Excellent. Okay, and on the count of three, saying what's up on the screen. 1, 2, 3. Crush assumptions. Wonderful. All right. I want to talk about decision making now, because I feel like when people talk about innovation, they forget one of the most important parts, which is making good decisions, because ultimately the ideas that you're putting out into the world are only as good as what you're deciding to put out there. I have a question for you to ponder, and that question is, what time of day do you make your most important decisions at work? So I'm going to give you 3 categories that you might fall into. So the first category is that perhaps you make all your most important decisions in the morning, like before lunch. Second category is that perhaps you make your most important decisions in the afternoon or the evening, like once you've, kind of cleared the inbox out and got things under control. The third category is that maybe it's just completely random. Maybe there is no rhyme or reason as to the time that you make decisions, or maybe a lot of your decisions are collaborative, so it depends on the time of day when you're able to access your workmates. So 3 options to think about: morning, afternoon, and just a little bit random. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Just have a chat to the person next to you and work out which of those 3 categories you each fall into. All right, wrapping up those conversations. Okay, So we'll see where the room's sitting. Okay, so show of hands, who's sitting in this first category, who's morning decision making? All right, I'm going to call that like 15% of the room. Cool. Okay, who's afternoon, evening decision making? Not many, we'll call that 5%-ish. And who is just random? Yeah, there should be 80%. Or so, if my numbers add up. Okay, so what that means is for 85% of you, there's a lot of potential to improve your decision-making abilities. So, comes down to this topic called decision fatigue, which is a very, very well-researched topic in the field of cognitive psychology. So what happens, what decision fatigue is all about, is that when we wake up every morning, assuming that we've had a good night's sleep, if you think of our decision-making powers as like a battery in our brain, we wake up and that battery is fully charged. But with every single decision we make over the course of the day, it eats away at that battery power, where by the end of the day, it's kind of like that battery is running on empty. And all decisions eat away at that power. Small decisions eat away at our decision-making power, such as what shall I have for breakfast? Big decisions eat away at it as well, like how should I allocate this budget? Who should I recruit into this role? So every single decision eats away at that battery power. So the basic tenet of decision fatigue is this. The more decisions that you make over the course of the day, the worse the quality of those decisions become. So if you were to graph time of day by decision-making quality, you'd end up with something that looks like this. So the big problem with having decision fatigue and making poorer quality decisions is that it leads to us taking the easy way out. And I'll give you an example. I'll talk you through sort of one of the hero studies in this area that was done looking at the decisions of judges over an Israeli court. And the decision that the judges had to make was whether or not they should grant someone parole, and they looked at 1,100 different decisions. And what they found, and this is also good advice if you're ever in trouble with the law as well, if you're ever in America, dealing with their security. So if you're up in front of the judge at 9 o'clock in the morning, your chances of being granted parole are about 70%, right? So that's the spot your lawyer needs to get for you. In contrast, if you're up in front of the judge at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your chances of being granted parole drop to about 10%. And that is because decision fatigue has set in and the judge is simply taking the easy way out, which is not to grant parole. Right? So this has very big implications. And when you think about this in the context of innovation, like no one has ever changed the world through taking the easy way out. So we need to not make our biggest and most important decisions after lunch. So something I loved, I read this a few years ago back when Obama was the president of America. Something that Obama did during his presidency is that you might have noticed he only ever wore 2 different types of suits. He only owned navy suits or dark grey suits. And he says, I only own 2 different types of suits because I don't want to waste precious mental energy deciding on what to wear every morning. And for the same reason, he ate the same thing for breakfast every day so he could preserve his decision-making power for more important decisions. So for you guys, the thing that I want you to take out of this is to never make big decisions after lunch, okay? So we're going to put this in memory and let's like tap on our watches or if you've got a smartwatch, don't do that. I've just brought up the weather. So tapping on our watches and on the count of 3 saying what's up on the screen. 1, 2, 3. Never make big decisions after lunch. Awesome, fantastic. All right, I want to talk about one more thing, and then if we've got time for questions, we can take a few questions. All right, so I think like why innovation gets talked about but often not actually done is because innovation ultimately is risky. Like innovation is about trying to predict the future, and unless you've got a really awesome clairvoyant on the speed dial, then that is impossible to do. So how innovation works at most companies is kind of part of the problem. So generally what will happen is that someone will come up with an idea, which we've already talked about that being problematic anyway as a starting point, but someone will come up with an idea. Then like if that idea is, got a bit of merit, someone like, high up will go, oh, write a business case and have like Has everyone written a business case in the room at some point in their working life? Has anyone not written a business case? Because I can explain what it is. A few people. Okay. So what a business case is it's basically arguing why your idea should get funding. And so what you put into a business case, you basically just sit behind your computer and write it. Like you wouldn't, venture out into the outside world, God forbid. And you write away and you make a bunch of assumptions, and then you go into Excel and you create a bunch of charts that go like that. And the steeper the gradient, the more money you can ask for. And that's pretty much a business case. And so business case gets written. Of course, the numbers stack up because it's a business case. And then the powers that be go, oh, that sounds really good. Let's do that. Let's implement that. And then lots of money gets thrown behind the idea. But then the idea fails, and look, in a lot of categories, sort of 8 out of 10 ideas fail is kind of a bit of a standard statistic that we find, and we wonder why. And it's because of this flawed process. So what the most innovative companies do, certainly based on our data, is that they replace this stage in the middle for experimentation, which involves actually getting out of the building and experimenting with real customers, and basically doing what a lot of us were taught in like high school science class, and what a lot of other people that are still in the education sector and in universities still practice, and that is scientific method. So that is what we need to apply to testing ideas. So did we all do science class in high school? Yes. And who's still working in academia now? Yeah, a few of the group. Awesome. So scientific method. So this is great. This is about setting hypotheses and actually testing things with real data and real behaviour. So in terms of what an experiment loop looks like in the context of innovation, it looks like this. So you've got an idea. Rather than hiding behind your desk and writing a business case, you instead design an experiment and you get out into the real world. So you start with setting hypotheses, thinking about the idea that you've got. And again, I use that term broadly. It could be a marketing campaign, it could be a product, could be a service, process, whatever. And you go, why do we think customers are going to value this? What are my hypotheses that suggest that this is actually a winning idea from a customer's point of view? And you write hypotheses, which are educated guesses, which I'm sure we all remember. Then what we do is we create what people call a minimum viable product, or an MVP, which is the most basic version of our idea that we can come up with. And I'll talk you through an example in a moment. And then we design an experiment that's going to test cause and effect, that's going to test our hypotheses. Then we can analyze that data because we've got real data based on actual customer behavior, not just intentions or what people reckon. And then we can iterate our idea. So what's really important about experimentation is that it's quick. Like, experiments shouldn't take more than a week or so to do. They should be cheap. They shouldn't cost more than a few $100 or a few $1,000s. And they're based on real behaviour as opposed to intentions. And yet, certainly in marketing circles, a lot of people still base a lot of their decisions on intention. So who's like out there running focus groups or knows people in their organisation that are running focus groups? Yeah, okay. So focus groups. And I say this, like, in my past life, I used to work as a consumer psychologist. So I've run hundreds of focus groups. And focus groups are basically where you get a group of, like, let's say, 8 people, plus or minus 2, together in a room, and you go, hey, what do you reckon of this campaign or product or service? And people generally like to please, and they're like, oh, yes, I think that's really good. I think I'd be very likely to buy that. And basically, it's people's intentions that you're measuring. And we know that there's a very low correlation between what people say they're going to do and what people actually do. So experimentation overcomes that very, very big flaw in focus group methodology when it comes to predicting the success of an idea, and it actually gets past that because you're testing behaviour. So as a brief example, as we apply all our own tools at Inventium as well as with our clients. So a little while ago, we came up with this idea based on a particular problem that we were trying to solve. There was this idea called Hack in a Box. And what Hack in a Box is designed, at the time was designed to solve the problem that creative thinking is something that generally gets shoved out of you in high school, in particular, sometimes at university as well. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could bring the tools and methodologies that that we're teaching at companies like Google and Apple and so forth, and actually bring them into high schools for students to learn so that we can increase creativity rather than doing what a lot of schools do, which is decrease creativity. So we designed a program that was a six period or 6 class program where we presented students with a real problem to solve from one of our clients, and over these 6 classes they learned different thinking tools, they learned how to run experiments, and then they pitched back their ideas to the companies that set the challenge. So that was the idea. The riskiest hypothesis that we wanted to test is we knew that like real estate or time in high school classes is so tightly held. Like there's so much to cover on the curriculum. Teachers are kind of jam-packed with all the demands and things that they need to cover. So that was the riskiest hypothesis. We needed to test, would teachers actually make the time for Hack in a Box in their class? So to do that, we could have just, called up a bunch of teachers and go, hey, this is the program. What do you reckon? But that would have just been testing intentions. So what we did, we spent $110, and that was spent through me building a website on Strikingly. So I built this. I don't write code, but I can build websites on software that makes it really easy. That cost me $100. Bought the domain name for $10. We sent this round to sort of through all our social networks saying, hey, teachers, we want to talk to you about this idea. We got 60 teachers writing to us within about 24 hours. And then we called up about half of them. We said, hey, here's the program. Then we sort of explained it to them. And then the very last question was the essence of the experiment, where we said, so we're taking bookings for next term. Would you like to book your class in to run Hack in a Box for next term? Because if they said yes, that was real behaviour. They were committing. And if they said no, then again, we're testing real behaviour. What we found is that 75% of teachers said, yes, please book me in, at which point we confessed that we did not have a program and it was an experiment. But we got it up quickly, and now it's been run all over Australia in, I think, about 50 schools or something like that. So running experiments. This is the final thing I want you guys to take from this. When we're thinking about innovation, don't rely on focus group methodology or surveys where you're just testing intentions. Get out there and test behaviour and do it really cheaply and quickly. So running experiments. Let's go like this. Like, we're in high school science class where we're mixing chemicals. Maybe we're on Breaking Bad. And on the count of 3, saying what's up on the screen. 1, 2, 3. Run experiments. Fantastic. Awesome. Cool. So what were the 4 things that we just learned? Find frustrations, crush assumptions, never make big decisions after lunch, and run experiments. Awesome, fantastic, cool. What now? I want to give you guys a couple of different resources if you, are passionate about innovation like me and, want to keep getting better at this stuff. Can I get you to open up a browser on your mobile phone? Whether you've connected to the Wi-Fi, hopefully you have. Otherwise, hopefully your mobile phone is working in here. And if you pop onto the URL, just enter that in your browser, inventium.com.au/stuff. So you'll get to a page where you enter your email address. And what I'd love to send you is 2 things. So firstly, while you're doing that, I'll just talk. So firstly, I want to send you the slides from today. And I would encourage you with those slides to share them with whoever you think could benefit. We really think it's important that the more people that know this stuff, the better. So share the slides widely. We're not people that guard our IP. The other thing that I'll send you is an assessment that we created to actually see how creative, what is the innovation aptitude of your team right now. And that's fine if you're a team of 1, that's cool, but you might be, might have some more people in your team. So you can go through that and we'll send you a report that outlines where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses. So super handy resources if you do indeed want to get better at innovation and become more innovative. Give you one more moment to type your email in. I should add, don't take a picture of this. That doesn't work. It's not a QR code. And we only look at the emails an hour after. No, that'll all get sent out to you. Lovely. I reckon we might have a couple of minutes for questions possibly before we break. Is that fair to say? But before we do that, I want to leave you with this quote because I quite fancy it. This is the guy that discovered vitamin C, which is a really great vitamin. So Dr. Albert said, innovation is seeing what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought. So I wish you guys the best of luck in seeing things in completely new and different ways and changing the world by doing that. Thank you very much.
If anyone has questions, they should have a microphone in their hands. So, and we have volunteers who could help us with the microphones. Mohammed. So, any questions for Amantha?
Yes, in the middle.
Do you have a microphone?
Hey, yell it out. I can repeat it.
No, we need the microphone.
We need the microphone. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't break rules. Yeah. The irony.
Hi, Amantha. That was great. I've got a personal question. What happens to decision-making around marriage proposals over dinner?
That's hilarious. Well, you know what?
People propose at breakfast time, or?
Well, that's an interesting question, because one of the ways to is through getting glucose to the brain. So if it's after dinner and particularly after dessert, we are actually recharged. And interestingly, in that judge's study, one of the experiments that they run was looking at the effect of taking a break or having some food, and that actually counteracts the effects of decision fatigue. So it's still fine to propose marriage. Do it after dessert. That is the best time.
You mentioned about sort of understanding what the problems are that you want to try and solve with innovation. So when you work in an organisation that has a lot of strategic objectives and priorities, how do you educate the teams of people to know which problems are worth solving?
Sure. So there's a formula that we use, courtesy of Professor Clayton Christensen, who's kind of, some of you might have heard of him, maybe not, professor at Harvard. And what we look at is we look at what is the problem that the customer is trying to solve, or the job to be done. What is the job that they're trying to get done that they can't get done with today's solutions? And we're looking at things like what's the importance of solving that problem for them or getting that job done. We're looking at how frequently does this problem occur, and what is the level of frustration that they're experiencing. And so if you add up importance and frequency and multiply that by frustration, it gives you a way of prioritising those problems and therefore prioritising your strategy.
Thank you.